I was kind of grumpy. My allergies were going. I was still feeling a little under the weather. My wife pointed it out to me, and you know what? She was completely right. I was being a party pooper. I've been so blessed lately. Just everything has been really and truly going my way in so many ways. And so, after our conversation, which as a married couple you have to have once in a while. You have to uplift the other person, and even if the other person's not in the greatest of moods, which I wasn't today, you have to find a way to uplift them and talk to them and have those hard conversations. And she was willing to do that, changed my entire demeanor, and we went to the zoo and had a fantastic time. Really, really thankful that we went today. It was thunderstorming in the morning, and it really cleared up. It was just so nice and cool. Sometimes in the pavilions it was super hot, but for the most part it was just such a lovely experience. Now, while I was at the zoo, I just kept on, getting volunteer after volunteer, or I'd read message board after message board, or scientist after scientist talk about, how we evolved in the age of the earth and everything that goes along with, secular science. And don't get me wrong, I am probably lean towards an old earth. I'm okay with the young earth too, from a Christian perspective. If I used to believe that if God said it was 6,000 or 7,000 years old or whatever it was when it was made, and take away all the time frames that we don't understand, and if that's what it is at face value, so be it. And I'm not going to debate that. I'm not going to be standing in front of the Lord one day during Judgment Day and be too worried about that aspect of Christianity. Maybe I should. Maybe God holds that in high regard, and maybe I should be better in that respect. But I find that it's not as deep of a Christian point that maybe others would make of it. But anyway, I just kept on hearing these statements, and more or less, the statements that pretty much point to know God, that point to us existing in the universe, and if the universe came through, multiple dimensions, the Big Bang, through a plethora of other unexplained scientific thought processes or test processes so far, that's fine. That's cool. Like, if that's what people believe, my goal would be to help them to have a relationship with the Lord at some point, and to discuss science with some of the ridiculously smart people that I have in my life, multiple people with PhDs who love the Lord. I leave that to those conversations for them. But I just did find it interesting at the conversations that we ended up having, and it was kind of something I just wanted to share tonight. There was just a young giraffe that was born. I think it was only about 8 weeks old, and this thing was already I think it was already 400 pounds. Was at birth. It was about 6'4". It had already been to 7'3", and my wife, being preggo right now, was just enamored with that size, just of this little baby, and how the giraffe plops to the floor, right? Like this tall giraffe being, I can only assume, like 15 to 20 feet tall, right? And its legs probably dropped the poor little giraffe probably about 6 to 8 feet, or if not more. This lands, boom, and it's pretty much fully functional, ready to go. The mother giraffe was pregnant for 15 months, and all of a sudden this massive foal comes out of her body, and the giraffe looked like incredible. Like, she had I think she was about 2,200 pounds. They say normally she's around 1,800 pounds. She had her baby. Her baby probably was about 250 to 300 pounds to start, and now has already ballooned up to about 350 to 400 pounds. Amazing, just the size of these. We were only 20 feet away from these things. We've fed giraffes in the past at there's a Niagara zoo, and I just thought that was such an amazing experience to have this like 10-inch, 20-inch tongue come out, purple tongue, and come out and grab a carrot out of your hand. Just truly phenomenal. But what was sad was that the father of the giraffe, he had an accident, I think only a few months ago, and because of the accident, I don't know, with the door, there was a mechanism. He ended up having a heart attack, and he died. Me and my wife were kind of like miniaturely heartbroken in that moment to to kind of put two and two together that this little, foal never met their father. And we were asking the volunteer who was there like all the time. The guy just loved giraffes, talks everything giraffe related. He's just such a quaint, lovely person. We was like, did you see any sadness on the mother? And he was like, nah, no, they just like, he's gone. He's not there anymore. She like looked for him for a bit, and that was it. It kind of seemed pretty anticlimactic from all the other animal stories you hear, like, the animals that mate for life and, the cognitive capabilities of some of these animals, right? You just kind of hear all these stories, and then to hear, kind of like, whatever. I was like, oh, maybe it was a misrepresentation. And then we went to the gorilla pavilion, and we found out that, again, one of the other brothers had died. I think it was like a year and a half ago. So there was a third young man or a young girl, I should say, that was in the pavilion. They had to remove him because there was a mother and her two daughters who came over from a different zoo. And so because there would be fighting for this mother and two daughters to have intercourse with them, and they had to separate the healthiest one. They had to take away the weakest one and put the healthiest one in there together. But they also have to put these gorillas on birth control because the bigger gorilla is just going to keep having sex with these little tiny, gorilla girls. And the more I just heard about even in a caged environment, the crazy barbaricness of animals, I was just like, wow. I'm like, it is to me sometimes amazing how, and people can have differences of opinions, and that's cool, but how people sometimes can just stare you in the face and say, all of this stuff evolved over time, and we obviously don't. It's a microcosm for me to base it off of just purely evidence, right? Like I can't say with any strength of evidence that obviously some form of evolution is happening because we've only been able to test for a couple thousand years or whatever, or have the documentation for proper testing. And if things have evolved over millions of years, okay, I get that. But to me, it's just the leap of the amount of things that would fail over the course of time. Just, again, the placement of everything in our universe. There's just so many things that to me point towards intelligent design. And, and I'll get back to my daughters and the zoo in a second, but it was interesting, too, that we had an apologetics person from Apologetics Canada at my church just over the weekend, and he was explaining that there are three main belief systems, and I had only really thought of two, but him adding this third one was really good for me to dissect and listen to. He was saying that there is the belief in just a God, which is kind of like Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism. There's a belief in just the universe, which is atheism and to a degree agnosticism. And then there is the Judo-Christian, and I guess you could add in the Islamic view of things, where there is a creator and a universe. And I was quite intrigued because I knew a fair bit about Hinduism and Buddhism, and I never really thought of it being clumped in together like that. That kind of that universal, that like the God, like we kind of become one with the universe and we become God and we are like God. And then obviously the atheistic and Christian view I'd heard a ton about. But once again, he was basically trying to hinge on the point that all of this stuff is evidence based. It's the fight and look for truth. And so, in this concept of are we evolved or are we, becoming, or are we created? Have we over time become these, human beings of vast intellect and thought? Or were we created with that intent, with love and care? Or are we just in the universe? Once again, jogged all of my thought processes, theories. I went into some deep thinking points. And when I came out the other end, everything kind of continued to track the same way, that it just seems that we are not just, trying to become the universe, and there's too many plot holes with that, especially with moral values and just moralism in general. And, when I thought of the atheism point of view, to me, there's just way too many plot holes, and this universe seems way too wonderful for it to kind of just be poofing in and out of existence. And again, maybe we're not at, maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't believe so. I believe wholeheartedly in what I believe. I believe in my relationship with the Lord. But, maybe there is some form of simulation or something that I don't understand. And maybe we're not advanced yet. Fine, whatever. I'll take, if someone has that point of view, great. I'm happy that you believe that. It's not for me. I don't see evidence in that direction. But I will say that, with all the hurts and heinous pains and Christian fightings and the political realms that we're in and all the religious factions and issues that people have, I can understand why people would choose a route that seems a bit more, I guess you could say maybe cold-blooded or just a little bit more calculated. Anyway, I say all that to say that I came to that conclusion again, that I do feel that, we are created. I think to me that's an unequivocal, and I see it in my daughters. I see it in the way they are creative, the things that they say, the things that they do. And like I explained earlier with the animals, the barbaricness or the lack of emotion or care, the animal world as a whole, it's just, it's so crazy. It's topsy-turvy. It's completely flipped on its head compared to a moralistic, a creative, just, wonderful gift that we have of life in humanity. And I'm not saying humans are wonderful. We're awful at times. We're just downright terrible. I think we're actually, because I think we're born into sin, we're absolutely horrible to start off with. But I mean, the potential of where we can be uplifted and the things that we can do is fantastic. Anyway, I say all that to say that after hearing all of that and kind of the coldness and outside of the even with the chimpanzees or the orangutans, the repetitiveness of the answers that you get and some emotion but not much, I was just once again super enthralled with the way my 2-year-old, just turned 2, was able to recount the day, was able to talk about, the the giraffe mom teaching the giraffe baby girl how to pee. And she actually does it by lifting up her tail and peeing on her daughter. And so my daughter retold that story to me at 2 years old. She told me about how the gorillas were laying down. She called me a gorilla, which makes sense because I'm pretty hideous. And she also, talked about just how much fun she had and how the day was. And she was just so thankful as she passed out. Like, she grabbed my arm and she, snuggled into my arm, and she was just so happy that she went to go see these animals. But she also knew, she's like, animals go to sleep in their cage, essentially, something along those lines. I can't remember what it was. But she also knew that that was the place for those animals. And I was just, and of course I'm enamored, she's my kid, and we're completely biased in that context. But it was just a nice, kind of simple sum up to all of the deep theoretical thoughts, the recanting Darwin, and to think of what Stephen Hawking has said over the years, and what Dawkins has talked about, and the great debates him and Lennox have had, and these fantastic, the new atheist realm in general, and all the different things they brought forward. And they brought forward some incredible ideas, things that really challenged my faith. But I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm talking to Christians here for the most part, or theists, people who believe in creation, stick hold to your beliefs. Go and do the research, look into the science, and test the science out. I'm not telling you to continue in your belief system. I'm not telling you to switch over. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just saying, go and do your research. God is a God that wants us to think critically, to go and ask questions. God wants a relationship with us. And if we are going to have said relationship, we are going to need to ask those tough questions, the questions that most people are going to just kind of sideline. And I think that was the main focus of this video today, was just hearing how many people were just spitting information at me. And it just seemed like there was no critical thinking going on. It was just blah, 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 blah. This is what it has to be. This is how it is. Blah, 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 blah. And that also made me pause and think, how many of us as Christians do that as well? And not doing the research to get into arguments with people, but doing the research for our own relationship with God, to explore His glorious splendors in creation. I look at the word and I see the word science as a measurement of God's glory and His glorious creation. It's a physical measurement, and maybe I'll tag the video at the end of this one here as Dr. Aaron Prasad, breaks down the measurements, the biblical measurement tool of the Bible as a whole. And Mr. Dr. Men has a decent knowledge of what he's talking about, as he's studied astrophysics and knows a heck of a lot about life itself. So I'll definitely link that video at the end of this video. But yeah, it's just, there's so many things that I think we need to take a little bit more seriously as Christians and explore, and also just for fun, like to see how wonderful how vast our universe is, how small our universe is as well, and how these wonderful men and women of God have studied them, and they've made fantastic videos, and they have just a plethora of knowledge and information that God has graced them with. Again, not to argue, not to fight with people, because I think most of the time you're going to win someone to Christ based off of your relationship with them, the way you love your enemy, the way you love your wife, your kids, your family, the way you treat people who disrespect you. Those are I think the big soul winning changes and movements that are going to continue to shape and change our world, just like Jesus did in his disciples and everyone since then. But I would also suggest that you read up, learn up, again, not for someone else, but for yourself. So as I land the plane here today and I get close to finishing up the dishes, I would say, go to your local zoo. Go to your local neighborhood, hiking trail, whatever it might be. Go and bask in how wonderful God made his creation. It is spectacular. It is fantastically glorious. And take stock of the beauty that we have in our world, and also take stock in the knowledge that we've amounted and amassed over the centuries, and just enjoy this beautiful, beautiful creation that God has given us. God did not have to give us an amazing, beautiful world to explore and to try to be peacemakers in, but he gave it to us because he delights in us and wants us to know more of him in a powerful way on this earth and in the next. As my my original teaching pastor, Charles Price, shared in one of his sermons in Corinthians, there is the talk of getting your rewards in heaven as Christians. And many people think of it as purely just crowns and this and that, jewels and maybe living a baller lifestyle. But he shared that he had heard a pastor once say, and it's always stuck with him, that, and maybe he had learned it from someone else and he from someone else, just like Christianity, it should be all pointing back to Christ anyways. But he said this pastor shared with him that what if our greatest reward in heaven was a depth of relationship with Christ that wasn't superficial, or that just went to to a certain depth or degree, but it was super deep because of all the trials and tribulations that we faced on this earth, because of the love that was needed to prevail, because of the time that we took on this earth to get to know God. And maybe things like that would change over time in the millennia and the thousands of millions of billions of trillions of years that would come into play over time. But it's a thought that has always resonated with me, and I would tend to believe that thought is true. So, build your relationship with Christ, build your witness with to other people, and I promise you that you will be spiritually the better for it. If you'd like to watch any of the other dads washing, doing dishes, please take a look at this playlist right here. Please comment and like. It really, really helps out, as well as subscribe, which should be right here. I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day, evening, morning, or night. God bless.